Forgive me for not bringing my regular videos into the channel, so allow me to bring you up a rant that I've been wanting to do for the past couple of years. Nintendo is quite the old company, isn't it? It managed to survive the time all the way to current year, bringing everyone joy and love towards video games and their massive money-milking franchises. I can attest to the quality of their games. I loved a lot of their games, and the Nintendo Switch is still a great console to play with. So in terms of the overall quality of their product, I can't always argue, for the most part at least. However, Nintendo, being the old company that they are, tend to have an equally old mindset in what the younger generations of today call a boomer mindset, which leads them into making the most inane and out-of-touch decisions that only they themselves are to blame for that particular situation. There are only so many number of times that you can blame the pirates to hide what you've been doing wrong in the past few generations. How so? Well, allow me to elaborate. Nintendo really love their intellectual properties. Nintendo fans are so dedicated on their franchises that would go even so far as to make their own fan creations. There are so many people out there making fan games and ROM hacks of old Nintendo games from Nintendo franchises, but in doing so, they expose themselves to Nintendo's judgmental legal hammer. How dare you decide to make free fan games that in no way interfere with their business, but we're going to say that they are because insert legal clauses here. Nintendo obsessively cares about the pirates in the same way that a kid obsessively cares about the monster in the closet. Actually, that applies to pretty much a lot of entertainment media companies these days. These big corporations are always going to find ways to convince the uninformed consumers that the piracy boogeyman is the bane of our existence, the one thing that will cause destruction to the video game industry as a whole, and not, say, corporations consistently putting mediocre games with terrible business practices with committee-driven corporate influence, exploiting people's love and passion towards a particular franchise for the sake of cash that they still haven't managed to recover. But hey, pirates are definitely the problem, especially for big multi-billion-dollar corporations like Nintendo. Please feel bad for us. Please stand for our company in social media and defend us from those evil gamers wanting to have some fun with our game without having them being taken down because they haven't followed this specific legal clause. Nintendo, to say that the pirates are interfering with your overall revenue stream is like saying that one speck of dust in the darkest corner of your room is interfering with your ability to watch X-rated videos. For one thing, most people are boomers when talking about pirating video games. The funny thing about pirating video games is that they actually require more effort and brains than actually purchasing the games through the online market itself. You'd be surprised at the amount of people who couldn't be bothered to take some time to learn stuff. As someone who helps people with tech problems for more than a decade now, you have no idea how many times I've encountered people who don't know how to read the included instructions, don't know how to follow the instructions properly, don't know which download button to click on a specific website so that their personal information is not stolen, or don't know how to use computers in general. Piracy has a learning curve that people just couldn't be bothered to get through. If you think that is easy, congratulations. You are smarter than most people in the entire world. There might be thousands of people who are downloading ROM copies of your favorite games on shady websites, but that number is nowhere near the amount of people who will purchase the game either physically or on the eShop. And that's if we're talking about Nintendo's own vanilla games. What about the ones that people modify, like ROM hacks? What about games that are shared for free? I don't blame anyone for going back to the glory days of Nintendo and mod them so that they can bask in their infinitely more fun and interesting games and experience them in a way that they haven't experienced before, like Six Nights at Zelda or Zelda and the YouTubers? But hey, boomer audiences resonate very well with a boomer company, so good on you for knowing the kinds of people you can manipulate to buy games from, as in rich tech illiterate boomers who would rather spend loads of cash to big corporations to get the games that they want rather than reading the freaking manual. Is this the reason why people are begging for Nintendo to officially localize Mother 3 rather than downloading the fan translation that has existed for decades at this point? Or is it because Nintendo fanboys are so obsessed in giving money to Nintendo that it turns into a moral obligation to the point where piracy is automatically wrong in their eyes because it doesn't give money to Nintendo Senpai? Nintendo is like a hooker. Just because you pay them doesn't mean they actually love you for real. There are many reasons why people go to these ROM sites to download your games, Nintendo. It's because you haven't given them access to the games that they want from you. Oh sure, we can also entertain the argument that these people want games from you for free, but what about the games that you don't sell at any retail stores? What if these people actually have the money, but you don't provide them the means of getting the product that they wanted. So are we supposed to just forget Metroid Prime and pretend that the game doesn't exist just because Nintendo isn't selling that game anywhere anymore? Don't you think, as a fan of Nintendo properties, and especially the Metroid series, that it's a big slap to the face? We've already established many times that the solution to piracy, especially piracy to old softwares that haven't gotten support for years, is to establish easier, more accessible, and importantly legal platforms to acquire such softwares, something that Nintendo really loved to destroy. Imagine a mostly functioning and legal way of playing old games from consoles that are out of production being completely wiped off of the planet because you couldn't be bothered to update them or make them cross-compatible between platforms. I wonder why these people are downloading ROMs off of your old games. And thus Nintendo comes in to slap everyone who dared to redistribute their old and presumably abandoned video games. They're only making ways to re-release old games that they think deserve to be re-released for the public, such as Super Mario 3D All-Stars. This is something that a lot of people get really excited for, and I too love the prospect of playing old Mario games in my Switch. That is, until people find out that the game is only going to be sold for a limited time, as in, you can only buy the game until the specified date in which the game will be taken off of the market, both the physical and the digital copy. That is a really BS anti-consumer practice that will stop a lot of people in buying the game. No, it won't. People bought it anyway. At this point, I'm convinced that if Nintendo is going to re-release Metroid Prime, they're going to only allow people to play the game if they have a Zero Suit Samus amiibo, and people still buy them anyway. Let's get back to the lawsuit where Nintendo says that piracy is a serious, worsening international problem. Funny thing is, the specific lawsuit is meant for the pirates who are selling hardwares used to hack or jailbreak the Switch. If you thought software piracy is a learning curve, hardware piracy is a learning black hole. There are even ones that require you to disassemble the entire console and solder something on the motherboard. That's quite the threat for the company's revenue, especially when the average person has about as much soldering experience as that chick from that stock photo. But I'm missing the point. That's the dirty work that the pirates are supposed to do, and you, the average consumers, don't have to do that. You just need to pay these people to do the jobs for you. Doing so will grant you a hacked Switch with tons of games and less money to be given to Nintendo without the efforts of learning all of that unnecessary stuff. That's basically how a lot of the pirates in my country operates, aside from the actual ones. They provide both the console and the services to pirate them. My question is, can you find these services in any first world countries in general, or any country that provides the gaming industry the most cash? I think the amount of GameStop or legal game retailers completely outweigh the amount of game piracy services that exist within those countries. Not to mention, buying the game online is a lot easier than jailbreaking your Switch and downloading the ROMs online. You will only find these piracy services in third world countries with a garbage dwindling economy that is in no way going to provide any significant benefit to Nintendo as a whole. Oh, wait a second. Did I see China there on the top? There are lots of pirates in China, and the only gaming industry that they serve is themselves, so they don't count, Nintendo, especially when your console only recently came into their market. Point is, I just don't see how these services, or piracy in general, hurts Nintendo in the long run, when it's a lot easier for most people, especially Nintendo audiences, to just buy the game on the eShop. That's one of the reasons why 3D All-Stars sold really well, because people couldn't be bothered to emulate those 3 games, and they want to play these 3 classic games on their portable console. The fact that 3D All-Stars sold really well, despite the ROMs of these 3 games existing in the wilds and available to download, emulate, and play, shows how much of an impact that piracy has with Nintendo products in general, as in jack freaking squat. So knowing all of that, why is Nintendo still adamant in suing every pirate hacking group or ROM distributors for providing the games that they haven't been able to legally provide for several years? The answer is because Nintendo is the worst kind of paranoid boomer that is unable to get in with the times, and will keep on sucking on their thumbs, thinking about how the pirate boogeyman will get them. No matter how much money or love or passion that you give to this company or their intellectual properties, they will still have this paranoid mindset that everyone is gonna get them, and that they will be unsuccessful in several years, when in reality they're able to stand toe-to-toe with other console manufacturers regardless of their superior technology. To put it simply, I think they're just being paranoid. But those are just the hardware or software piracy stuff. Now let's get into the really petty stuff. Remember that time where Nintendo DMCA everyone that streamed their games and their solution is to put everyone in their copyright protection racket with their YouTube creators program? Well, they decided to take down people who play Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity because they streamed the game a lot earlier than everyone else. Nintendo is so much of a boomer that they forgot that time zones exist. But I guess I can't blame them for taking extra precautions after the game got leaked. Recently, a famous TikTok and Twitch star got sued by Nintendo for using the Pokemon name and flaunting Nintendo-themed merchandise because her name is Pokeprince. Why this person specifically? There are millions of other Twitch streamers, content creators, and people straight up selling merchandise off of your intellectual property, but this person over here is where we toe the line? It's rather selective, don't you think? Not that I want to defend a freaking TikTok star of all people, but you get my point. And here's the one that so many people talk about recently. Smash Bros. Tournament is cancelled because the tournament host uses an unapproved rollback netcode that makes Super Smash Bros. Melee playable online, and they have to play online for 2 reasons. The first one is because we're living in current year, and the second one is to prevent child predators from invading the space. Now keep in mind that we're not talking about Smash Bros. Ultimate here. We're talking about Melee, a game that is nearly 20 years old, made for a console that's several generations behind, that's been completely out of production. So there's absolutely no way for Nintendo or anyone to be able to acquire this game legally, except secondhand, but last time I checked, secondhand purchases do not give money to Nintendo Senpai, and that's still bad. But Nintendo comes in and pulled that cease and desist letter anyway. They even have an official statement that is absolutely laughable.
Nintendo appreciates the love and dedication the fighting game community has for the Super Smash Bros. Series.
No, you don't. And anyone who buys that statement should retake reading comprehension lessons in primary school.
We have partnered with numerous Super Smash Bros. Tournaments in the past and have hosted our own online and offline tournaments for the game, and we plan to continue that support in the future.
In other words, only our tournament matters. Only our netcode is the one that you have to use, even though it's absolute trash. And actually, Nintendo Online in general is absolute trash. Nintendo then proceed to say the reason why they banned the tournament is because they use illegal copies of Super Smash Bros. Melee in conjunction of a mod called Slippy during their online event. Illegal copies, Nintendo! Surely you are able to provide us with legal copies of Super Smash Bros. Melee, this nearly 20 years old game. Surely you are able to provide us with legal copies of a GameCube, a console that's been out of production for several years. Of course you can, because that's what Nintendo does to you. Nintendo is going to force you into their ecosystem. If Nintendo doesn't re-release or remaster any of their older games into their newer platforms, that means that you should just completely forget about them. Leave them to rot. Anyone who tries to play them or even archive them should be punished with the utmost contempt and millions of dollar lawsuits. Instead, what you should do is to play the games that we arbitrarily made available to everyone, because that's the one that gives us money. Why is it that the only console manufacturer who cares about backwards compatibility and has implemented them very well happens to be the one that doesn't have a lot of good exclusives? Now, do you see why people have such utter contempt for Nintendo as a company? I love video games. I love Nintendo video games. I grew up with the original Super Mario Bros. On a bootleg NES console that was super cheap compared to the really expensive PlayStation at the time. I love the Switch. I think it's a great console overall. I just hate Nintendo as a company. Nintendo as a company has made several fatal missteps and out-of-touch decisions that paint them to be the boomer company that they are. They do not care about any of their old games, and when they do, they will put them as a limited edition that you can only purchase up to a specific time in order to artificially increase sales for the product. They think that piracy is a problem when piracy is about as accessible to the common people as a 20-foot brick wall, and is about as much of a problem to a multi-billion-dollar corporation as a single mosquito being a problem to the structure of a skyscraper. I can go on, but bottom line, Nintendo games rock, Nintendo company sucks.